Yep. So, just trying to explain what exactly he has produced here. I mean, the book looks like a strategy guide on the cover, right? It's just, something you would look, if you look at this stuff in a store, you'd think, okay, this is a strategy guide for Super Mario Brothers 3, and it's absolutely not that. The book can basically be, it's split into two. It's 100 pages of his autobiography, and then there's another 100 pages where he's just describing himself playing Super Mario Brothers 3, and interspersing it with a certain certain small paragraphs about his grandmother dying. Like, that's the book. And I mean, his kind of ambition with this is that, you have books that are written, like in the film world, he's also into film as well as video games, where he says that, you have books that are written about Citizen Kane, or, like these sort of high art films, like David Lynch films, trying to analyze and explain what's actually going on in these films for posterity and so on. And he wanted to, do the similar with video games. And according to him, SMB3 is like the Citizen Kane of video games. And, it was just so necessary to tell this particular story. I mean, if he had any sense in his head whatsoever, this would have been a playthrough that would have lasted 2 hours with some commentary over it, and
or a really shit video essay.
Yeah, put behind a paywall. That's what he should have done. There's absolutely no reason this needs to be a book. If you're going to write a book, you need to actually have details. It's like one of these Jordan Peterson quotes. Oh, the book is so different. It's like a Van Gogh painting. There's detail and layers upon layers. This book does not have that. It's just. It's like him talking about Super Mario Brothers 3 is the lamest thing I've ever read, to be honest. It's like watching someone, some kind of Indian who's been tasked on Fiverr or something to describe what's going on, like for some person who's blind or something, in Braille, trying to explain what's actually happening in Super Mario Brothers. That's how banal it is. But like the interesting parts is when he's talking about his life and so on, which of course I wish he would have gone more into detail about what actually happened. That's kind of why you write the book, right? I mean, if you put all the embarrassing stuff in there. I think there's this quote, Emile Chiron, who's this pessimistic existentialist philosopher, who said that if you're going to write a book, you should write the stuff that you're afraid to tell everyone else, or like the deepest, darkest secrets that you will not tell anyone. That's what you should put in the book, right, to make it as good as possible. But he kind of doesn't. He just kind of goes through the motions of talking about his life and how Nintendo affects his life and so on. And it's a very banal story. I was hoping for, detailed accounts of him having his head pushed into the locker rooms and down the toilets by jocks and stuff. But it's so like boring. If you could get up the Google sheet, we could read a little bit from it.
Yeah, I'll
see
read
what's actually
quotes.
going on.
Jay Burden, feel free to comment whenever you have something.
I will say I did know about his book. I made the executive decision not to read it because I've heard Movie Bob talk, and I know that there can be no intelligent thought come out of his written work, and so I just completely skipped that part. But I'm glad that someone actually read the book, Luddick. I think you might be in the first 10 people to read that book after him.
You showed me
his mother.
Luddick, you showed me a review on like Amazon.
Can you go on Goodreads? Can we just for the fun of it look at the 5-star reviews that he has for this book?
Sure.
That are
Goodreads,
like not suspicious.
Super Mario 3 brick by brick. Let's see here.
Totally not suspicious 5-star reviews on this book.
Okay, bring that up first here. No, I don't want to do whatever that is. Let's see here.
So there's like a search filter that you can use there. It's not completely intuitive. I think if you go under rating details, you can get
rating details. Order.
It's next. No, it's next to the stars there, and then you can just sort of click on if you only want the 5ers, you could click on the 5.
It doesn't seem to be working.
I think there is some sort of.
I think it like the opposite. So now so the best ones are at the bottom or something. Nope, never mind.
No,
Okay.
this is actually the organic order. But I last time I was in there, I found a way where you could actually sort the reviews.
Maybe
Check
I
the
need
top.
to.
There's
Hang
a
on.
drop-down menu. See sort order, I believe.
Top.
The top
you
of
have
the
to.
reviews box.
Yeah.
Sort order.
No, that's just newest and oldest.
Oh, never mind.
Okay, but I mean, there's so few. There's like 3 5-star reviews or something, or 17. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, let's.
Okay, here's one. I enjoyed this combination Mario history and play-by-play. It reminded me of a Let's Play, but in a book form. Yes, it's obvious a lot of time and effort went into translating the Super Mario 3 experience into text, and is the only example of its kind that I know of. Okay. Mario Bros. Is excellent. Bro, this story is the best thing I have ever read. It is better than Hungry Games and 15 Shades of Grey. The writing was flawless, the story was exciting, and you were an amazing character. Thank you for this good read. I cannot wait to see more from you.
And if you click on his user, right, Barry Lawn there. So he has one review.
Has one book.
And that's what you see with a lot of these 5-star reviews here. It's like people with like one
review.
One review. So they created their account to review this book.
This book does
it's
exactly
completely
what
organic.
it says it will do in the introduction, which is essentially to be a let's play in book form. Yes, one review. Yeah. Okay.
Who criticizes
the book
critics?
Gets 3 starts, but there's a lot of hate for Chipmans, so that's why he gave it a 5. Okay.
So, but I mean, there's a lot of that stuff going on, like with internet critics. You know.
Oh yeah.
I mean, this is sort of Rotten Tomatoes. It is basically like a sort of shitlib kind of friend enemy meter. You know, that's what I look at it as.
Yeah.
When you see some of these movies, because Movie Bob has Rotten Tomatoes as well, and you can see very clearly, like, he knows the friend enemy distinction. He understands like what movies you have to give a top review, and you have to give a shit review. So like if it's like Black Panther or some like, you know, Afro Cape shit stuff, you have to give it like a top shelf review.
We saw that image of him giving like Rise of Skywalker. I think it was it Rise of Skywalker 8 out of 10.
Yes. And if it's like Female Ghostbusters, it's like 8 out of 10. And if it's something like the film of like Hillbilly Elegy, like by J.D. Vance, that's like 2 out of 10 because it's really bad and it's like white people in it. And the Book of Eli, it's like 2 stars, even though you have.
Did you see it in his tweets as well? Yeah. He has an extreme hatred for like the southern lower class. Let's put it like that.
Yes. So if it's white and if it's like you know, Christian, evangelical, anything like that, he can sniff it out immediately, and he will just use whatever little power that he has to
go on the attack. Yeah. Okay. Do you want me to read from Beyond Borders?
Yeah, you can read the Unhappy Childhood. So.
Well, this is quite a bit. Okay. Stop me if you want to comment. Any of you.
Yep.
While I won't claim that I had anything close to an unhappy childhood, particularly compared to many of my friends, I wasn't having an easy time of pre-adolescence. I was, quite emphatically, a nerd in every sense of the word, save for academic excellence. I had too much of a problem with authority to be any good at schoolwork, but was still too weird and bookish to be accepted by most of my peers. Now, we talked a bit about this before the show started, Ludwig, but I found this first paragraph here extremely funny because he's basically spending a paragraph trying to say that he's not like other boys while explaining how he's just like every other boy.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I mean, I talked to you about it previously, but there's like so much in this book that I mean, it strikes me as being very familiar. I probably have the same amount of gameplay hours, you know, under my belt as this guy, and I could have written my own autobiography, just like talking about the video games that I played and how they affected me and so on. But I've always tried to like bury it, you know. I never wanted to define myself in terms of cape shit or the culture consumption, even when I was doing it for escapism, which I eventually recognized that the reason I'm sitting in and playing all these games is because my life is not going very well, right? So I'm just trying to escape. and I never wanted
yeah.
this to be my identity in a sense. But that's where, like, me and Movie Bob diverge, where he is just kind of completely leaning into all of the worst parts of himself and of humanity. Like, it's like this complete inversion of common sense and healthy values. Everything that's kind of unhealthy is good. Everything that's libertine, indulgent, that those are actually virtues. They're actually good things. So it's just so painful. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I mean to step on you
No,
there.
no problem.
So to me, if we're going back to the broader theme of Gen X and the search for authenticity, Movie Bob is really the ideal subject in the sense that he has, in his search for authenticity, basically conflated his consumption habits with who he truly is. And so for him, consumer choices, like what he uses for escapism, essentially, have become his core identity. And when you combine that with kind of, his personal politics of, like being on the right side of history, you have this toxic brew of essentially like, well, I need to be the right type of person. I need to create my
his
own.
bio-Leninism radar is tuned to perfection, and he knows exactly what to say and think to be able to stay in this sort of like consumerist bubble.
Oh, no, 100%. You've hit the nail on the head there. And when you know a little bit of his backstory, like for instance, he doesn't earn very much money. He's on government provided healthcare and he's diabetic. So essentially he requires the government to exist, for him to survive in his current form.
He knows perfectly well that, when Trump wins, quote unquote, which is why he got like crazy after Trump, it's like when we win, quote unquote, it's over for him, right?
No, 100%. And he is exactly the ideal subject. All he wants is to consume and then get excited for next product. He's medically dependent on the system. His job doesn't exist, unless this incredibly complicated, like globalized system, functions perfectly. He really is someone for whom, like, not only is he just objectively a loser, but everything in his life depends on, the system staying in control. And so, like, you're right, like his friend enemy radar is impeccable. Like, really, like if you want to look for your friends, find who Movie Bob hates. It's better than you could ever be at it. But it is almost also like everything you say about like the idealized Bugman. This person who just wants to be like fat and alone and to just escape from reality. Go into their little world where they can have exactly the kind of consumer products they want. Like, this is him. We found Mr. Bugman. Like there's a reason that the Soy Jack was modeled off this guy. He's kind of like the epitome of it. And so it's a useful way to examine that trope because, instead of being this abstract concept, it's just a real guy who exists.
It's perfectly put. And like you said, I mean, his job not existing, it's not just that his job as a film critic relies on the complex globalist infrastructure, but a film critic who wants to cover the type of stuff that he does. Because if you continue reading the quote, you'll sort of see that, like, he just wants to talk about the stuff he likes. He doesn't want to go out and see, like, okay, what are people interested in, and I'm trying to adapt myself to the consumer demand. He just wants to talk about like his consumer stuff, so the niche is even smaller. Like, I mean, it's exceptionally small, and he's just not willing to budge on his like preferred cultural Bugman tastes or like his lifestyle or anything, but not 1 inch. And it is really like the blue America, in a sense, like Team Blue in America, that sort of guarantees him that he's going to be able to keep doing that until he dies. But yeah, Walrus, if you want to keep reading, we'll learn a little bit more about Mr. Chipman here.
Yes, I'll keep reading. Just give me a second. Here we go. Instead of dealing with this in some kind of mature fashion, I made one bad decision after another, including the classic asshole move of trying to endear myself to the cool kids by trying to join the name-calling and belittling of the other uncool kids.
You never stopped, Bob. You never stop.
A part of me will probably hate myself for that until my dying day. I should probably add that I was attending a Catholic school at the time, so all my issues came packaged alongside an inseparable religious guilt to boot, And the teachers, free from the rigors of dealing with kids with serious problems like their public school counterparts, had plenty of time to devote to fixing me. I was in the principal's office. Did you want to comment?
Yeah, I was just
Jay?
going to say that's a very odd complaint to have. Yeah, we didn't have any serious problems, so my teachers had tons of time to spend with me and to make me a better person. That's such a ass backwards complaint. Like, I can't believe I went to a good school where my teachers cared about me. Like, what the heck? Like, that's absurd.
Yeah, it's
Yes. And I mean, apparently they didn't do enough, right? I assume that because it's a Catholic school, I don't know. I mean, the specific year, but maybe they still had corporal punishment, right? But they should have brought out the exorcists for this guy, because I mean, he's just that far lost.
Moose Footloose as a W for urban schools. Okay, let's continue. I was in the principal's office a lot, and so were my parents. They tried therapy, but I developed an unhelpful hobby of reading about child psychiatry techniques and then either purposefully subverting them or smugly informing the therapist that I knew why he was doing what he was doing. I even had an EKG, which at least required me to stay up all night beforehand watching Nick at Night and playing Nintendo, so there was that. I think that's very interesting that, once his lifestyle is threatened, then he's smart enough, apparently, to read about these things in order to sort of preserve himself. But he said he wasn't academically excellent, right? So it's not that he's like, I'm not calling him super smart, but he's smart enough, right? To fit into the midwit.
He really is like the true midwit. Like, obviously he's not a complete moron. He has retarded takes, but he writes enough. He can write technically cogent English sentences. So he's not like a literal retard.
Mhm.
But whatever intelligence he has,
or he's just lying about this.
That's another significant possibility. But it truly does strike at the heart of the midwit, right? Because obviously the midwit is referring to IQ, but there's no direct correlation between being 115 IQ and being a midwit. Like, there are plenty of people who are incredibly intelligent and yet are midwits. Like, it really has to do with that. Like, well, what do you use your intelligence for? And if you use it for just like mindlessly affirming the kind of like the system which is in power, using whatever intelligence you have to essentially like lean into, like the existing control system, it's like exactly what he's done. It's like, well, I mean, you just did it, and so like, this is again why I find Bob Chipman fascinating. Like, part of it's just the unhinged nature, but another part of it is that like everything we say about the left, Bob Chipman embodies. He is like the primordial libtard.
Yeah, he's like a super set, like the Ur characterization of everything.
Well, and it's part of the reason that I just, with no commentary, will retweet movie Bob, because he says things and it's like, I can't add any commentary to this. You just said it, and there are things like that, like much like you said, like he uses whatever kind of like cunning he has to just like feed his desire to live in a pod, essentially, to play video games all night, to never do anything.
Yeah. Do you have any comments before I read on, Luddick?
Nah, I think Jay Burton summed it up very well.
All right, we'll do the last bit. They recommended Ritalin and other mind-altering drugs, but my parents said no. I thanked them at least once a month for that, sometimes more. And amid all that, the most reliable escape I had was almost always Mario. While I could get bored with even my favorite movies or books after a while, the games were always a little bit different every time I played. So I played them, and watched the cartoons, and read the comics and the magazines, and filled my notebooks and sketch pads and the margins of my textbooks with Mario drawings. And I felt my ears perk up when the rumors began to swirl of Super Mario Bros. 3.
So I mean, I'm wondering here, like, why he is like anti-Ritalin, like from his perspective, why he thinks that's a kind of bad thing to be doing, when the alternative is that he's just going to do escapism into these consumer products instead, right? I mean, I can understand why, but let's say you give kids Ritalin. I mean, what's his argument against that? Is he against like the expert consensus on drugs? I mean, I doubt it, right?
I would
So
assume not, right?
yeah, maybe there's like some little bit of sincerity coming through here, through all the bullshit.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, because it's weird. This guy has very much the view of like, a eugenicist society optimizer, and for him to be against giving Ritalin to kids in school is kind of strange.
Yeah, exactly. So the next quote that we should look at is like if you look at Bob the Cool Kid, that's the header under A Boy Goes to War.
All right. Should I just read it?
Yes.
Bob the Cool Kid. But whatever. It was the 90s. Video games had arrived as the coolest ticket in popular culture. The arcades were in the midst of a brand new boom, driven largely by a new generation of more violent games aimed at teenagers. Mario and Nintendo were the acknowledged kings of video games, and Bob Chipman, formerly Bob the Dork, who's way too into Super Mario Bros. 3 brick by brick 30s. Oh, what's this?
No, so it's
Brick
a
by brick
sloppy by me.
36.
Just
Formerly Bob the Dork, who's way too into Super Mario Bros. 3, his dorky video games, was now Bob the guy who knows everything about the world's hottest new pastime. Why, yes, ma'am, I can tell you the best place to build up your EXP in Final Fantasy. What's that, sir? You can't quite make it through Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2? Let me show you a code that might help. Pathetic fantasies, even for a 10-year-old, but that's really how I figured things were going. Hell, maybe that's how they were just for a moment. But that moment, my moment, didn't last. Having had female friends who's worked at GameStop, this sentence here is not unusual. This has been used many times in real life.
No, it's perfect, but this is like another like slightly vulnerable moment, whether he knows it or not. Leading up to this paragraph, he sits and talks about how he was one of the first people to get into like video games before it became mainstream. So he was a loser because he was a nerd that was just like way too into it, and then like the stuff that he was into became mainstream, and he got like a real kick out of it because now he was the expert. Like he was sort of like top dog for being expert at this particular thing. And
Yeah.
the stuff that broke his streak is basically like Mortal Kombat or like Doom.
The dude bro gamers.
Yeah, like when you get like the sort of dude bro teenage extreme stuff, like this kind of violent stuff that's like it's not as hugboxy as he would have wanted. He prefers the kind of cozy Nintendo kid stuff to forget about life. Basically, he doesn't want to
bing bang wahoos. Yeah.
But I mean, anybody who is quote unquote a video game nerd, I mean, just start playing Mortal Kombat. There's, you can just adapt and learn that game and be the man, and who knows the most about Mortal Kombat. If you're a geek already and you understand game mechanics, there's no reason why you couldn't do that and just keep being on top. But like, this is like his insistence he wants not just to not change his lifestyle, but he wants to remain within his like particular little niche of that lifestyle and not budge an inch to adapt to even the people within the broader video game sphere. Like he only wants to talk about like this kind of side-scrolling platformy Super Mario Brother stuff. Like that's the only thing that he wants to talk about. He does not want to talk about fighting games or shooters or strategy or anything like that. It's just like pure escapism into escaping my bad childhood stuff, and that's the only thing that I want to do. So it's quite it's quite fascinating in terms of like his psychology. I mean, there are some other funny quotes here that I just added in here about like his use of language. If you look at the personal Vietnam
I gotta
quotes,
read personal Vietnam. In my memories, the great console wars dragged on like my own private Vietnam, and it didn't help that I was still constantly in trouble at school and in and out of therapy at the time for anger, attention, and authority issues. However, it really only lasted a couple of years.
So, I mean, he keeps using this type of language throughout the book.
There's no way. I don't know how it was in the U.S., but I mean, the Great Console Wars, quote unquote, it can't have been that big of a deal to affect anyone in real life in any way, shape, or form, right?
But this is how trivial he is, right? I mean, I really hope that there's like more to his life than this stuff. If this is the only bad thing that happened to him, then it's it makes him even more pathetic than he already is. I mean, there has to be some abuse in there, like that.
Like he might be writing this a bit tongue in cheek, right? But there's got to be something else to write about, Bob. As you said, there has to be like some dirty stuff.
Exactly, but he keeps using this language like Private Vietnam, 9/11. I talked about Super Mario. The reveal of Super Mario Brothers 3 was like his own 9/11, and this is his personal Vietnam. Like this language of how like these super trivial consumer things that he compares to like this bigger cultural moment in a sense. Like it is like this thirst for authenticity, but it's just like this pure fake simulated world in a sense that he thinks he can sort of relive great things through his own little consumer bubble.
Yeah.
Let's see what else is in.
And serious Super Mario lore.
So unserious Super Mario lore. This is perfect actually. Yeah, read this one.
Okay, let's do this. Mario and Luigi were born in the Mushroom Kingdom. That doesn't make any sense. How'd they grow up in Brooklyn then? Were they sent at some point like Superman, unaware of their own real origins? Is this in regard to like that old TV show?
Yes, I mean this is for some context here. He worships Super Mario, right? And one of the reasons that he talks about Super Mario as like being like this religious experience for him, and one of the reasons it's so significant is that it's revealed in the first Super Mario lore that Super Mario is Italian American, just like Movie Bob. So that's like the definitive selling point. He's not just fat, right? But he's also of the same ethnic group that Movie Bob is. So it's like that's why I made the meme. This kind of like my ancestor.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if you have it. Maybe you can show it.
That image afterwards. Yeah,
pull it up there. So he is like the Lord and Savior Super Mario, basically, until there's more products that are coming out about Super Mario that elaborate more on the lore, where the lore changes. I think that's in, let's say, like Yoshi's Island or something, where you see that, like, Mario actually grows up. Yes. I mean, this is like unironically his view on Super Mario, just to sort of understand the significance and why he keeps going back to it over and over again. But if you go back to the quote sheet, he let's see, he says that. So I think it's the unserious lore one. It's let's see, Yoshi's Island comes out, the Super Mario Brothers Super Show comes out. There's a lot of lore that basically says that, okay, well, he was actually born in the Mushroom Kingdom, but then that puts into question his status as an Italian American, right? And then like this is like a large existential crisis in Movie Bob's life as a child, right? Because like his Lord and Savior Super Mario wasn't actually Italian American, and then he starts to blame like Shigeru Miyamoto and these Japanese people for not actually being consistent with the lore, and like they're not taking it as seriously as he's taking it, and that's like this big problem for him. But let him speak for himself.
Remind you that this guy gave the latest Star Wars movie an 8 out of 10. Okay. Mario and Luigi were born in the Mushroom Kingdom. That doesn't make any sense. How did they grow up in Brooklyn then? Were they sent there at some point like Superman, unaware of their real origins? And how were they Italian Americans if they came from a world with no Italy and no America? Ooh, maybe that'll be the plot of the next game. Maybe I didn't have a breakdown or anything. It's not as though I was knocked into some kind of system shock over this. But the dissonance stuck with me for a while. By now, I had more important things to worry about in school and life to be completely consumed by this. College prep classes, girls, sex, drugs, and social hierarchy were giving me headaches. high school after all.
I'm gonna press X to doubt on the how much just
The
I'm
drugs or
having
the
so much
sex?
sex I can't I just can't cope with it.
I
If you
couldn't
look
I
like
couldn't
Bob
I
Chipman.
couldn't deal with this new Super Mario lore because I'm too busy having sex.
I'm just having so much. I mean, right, guys? Like you have so much sex, you just can't deal with Super Mario. Oops, feel
All
like
the sex
sand.
is giving me a headache, guys. Come on. Come on.
Like I
Come
always think
on,
of
yeah.
that scene, and it's a stupid comedy movie, but in that 40-year-old virgin scene where virgin movie where they make Steve Carell describe what breasts feel like, and he's like, oh, they feel like bags of sand, and
Yeah.
that's very much what Movie Bob seems to be doing. Like, oh yeah, hello, fellow sex havers, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Just like slipping that in there.
Okay. If I'd learned to keep my Nintendo worship relatively in check in the Sega is cooler days, I could hold it back for the age of everything but PlayStation is for kids. Mario games had been my thing, my refuge from everything else when I needed them. Now that refuge was tinged ever so slightly with doubt. It wasn't that Not from Brooklyn changed anything fundamental, but it felt so cavalier. That it wasn't presented as a surprise drove home the reminder that most of what Generation NES considered canon for its games was often just hastily composed fall mythos for US ad copy. And part of the story I'd been devoted to might have just been a narrative placeholder for Nintendo. That Shigeru Miyamoto, huh?
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Like these Japanese people don't really give a shit about your Italian American creed. They're just creating, their own form of goy slop in terms of software.
Yeah.
I don't know if I have any more comments on it, but yeah,
Robert two bombs weren't enough, Chipman.
Yes. At one point, it's going to have to come to that, right?
Worse than Pearl Harbor.
Wait. Read the the first line under Passion of the Christ.
Yeah, I'm just gonna read everything. All right.
Sorry, this is killing.
Meanwhile, my second blockbuster job led me to what seemed at the time like a stroke of great fortune.
The
An
fact that
older
there are
gentleman.
two is incredibly funny to me. Like either he got fired and then brought back, or he's like, I quit. I'm getting a real job, and then ended up working at Blockbuster Video again. Like the fact
Yeah,
that they took him
that's kind of
back.
what happened, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, was it at the same place?
No, it was at two different places. So
All right.
he tried to quit to do something else. I don't remember in particular
And then
what
he
it
came
was.
back. Okay.
Yep.
Meanwhile, my second blockbuster job led me to what seemed at the time like a stroke of great fortune. An older gentleman, who will remain nameless, came in asking if he could leave some flyers. Turns out he was starting up a film criticism show for local cable access television and was looking for on-air talent. Star Policy said I had to tell him no, but it said nothing about me volunteering for this position myself. After a set of meetings and conversations, I was hired to do the show along with this person and a female co-host. The resulting show was what you'd expect from local cable, but it was exposure and a chance to work on my craft, such as it was. I was the colorful member of the team, the younger guy with the wild opinions and the deeper film knowledge. It was a fun time while it lasted.
If you just pause it a little bit, I really tried to find like some footage of this stuff. It would have been great if somebody has that or can dig that up, because there's apparently some local cable show that's been run where Movie Bob is like this regular guest. And I assume that he doesn't come across as cool as he makes it sound here, but it would have been great to if
I'm
that's
sure
possible to locate.
if Kiwi Farms hadn't been bonked as many times as it has, it will still be around. Someone probably has it. Okay. I'd never gotten much of a sense that anything was especially off about the guy running the show. I knew he was fairly conservative politically. Wow, red flag, guys, red flag. He was an ex-military and an ex-cop, but it had never come up in any kind of negative way. But upon the release of Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ and the controversy surrounding it, something seemed to change in him. I was fairly certain both co-hosts knew that I'd seen the film and hadn't cared for it, and I expected it would make a good show when we sat down to review it. Instead, I got a phone call and an unnervingly scary life experience. My employer, though for the record I wasn't technically being paid for my services on the show, summoned me to a meeting in his van in an empty parking lot early in the morning. He did freelance security work, or he said he did at least, and was on the job. This set off more red flags than I could count, but I showed up to meet him. He presented me with a printout of a scathing blog review I'd posted after seeing the film the first time, and wanted to know what I had against Jesus Christ. Unwisely, I offered that my objection was to the anti-Semitism in the film and was told that those people had Schindler's List. Now it's our turn.
Based. I just imagine.
Nice.
So look, like obviously, this story didn't happen. Or if it did happen. It did not happen like this. But the picture he's painting is hilarious. This like schlubby guy working like, unlicensed security detail is so enraged by this blog post. He brings him in and he's like, "What's your problem with Jesus?"
Those people had Schindler's List.
Yeah, exactly. This book is great. I can't believe I didn't read this. I might have to check this out.
You could just hear the Hans Zimmer score in the background. Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of crap with the little pony inside, So you're getting the best stuff on this this sheet. Most of it is just super boring.
Yeah. Okay. I was then told that he would be using the passion discussion as an occasion to promote the film's positive message, and that if I wouldn't go along by saying that I liked the movie, my time on the show would be over. And that was that. I never heard from the guy again, but I know his show didn't last long without me. He told me he'd behaved in a manner.
This is literally the "Say Christ is Lord" meme. He literally brings Movie Bob out to his shed, and he's like, "Say it! Say it! If not, you can't stay in this public access TV show." But nonetheless, this is great.
I'm told he'd behaved in a manner, because it's hearsay and I won't get into specifics, that disturbed the production staff during the taping of the Passion episode, and that my name had come up, which had me walking around more than a little paranoid for a few weeks, but nothing ever came of it, sorry. Oh, great. Some good stuff in here, yeah. Falling outside the normal moral constraints every time. $5 says, "I won't get to finish the stream till tomorrow. Just wanted to say thanks for another great chat. Burden is the best guest." Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes.
Yeah, it would have been interesting to get the host's take on this. I mean, if he is somewhere, just to get like his version of what actually happened there.
That would be amazing.
I mean, for a lot of people in this book, it would have been great to just hear them explain it. I'm sure some details.
They had him come over to my car, and I made him say Christ is Lord.
So I don't assume what we see, like a private detective or something. Then so he's like just has the job of like spying on husbands who are cheating on their wives or something, and then during that he just brings in Movie Bob in his car.
Well, I'm imagining this framed like a film. There's some like schlubby ex-cop who's in like a gross van, with a TV camera in the back. And out the back window we see this like, this aging businessman, like having sex with a secretary, while in the foreground he's just yelling at young Bob Chipman to say that he likes Passion of the Christ. It's just such an absurd situation.
God damn it, Bob, they had Schindler's List.
It's our turn. It's our turn now. They never apologized for what they did to Jesus.
It's better. It's almost as good as MAGA country.
Oh yeah.
But read this one as well. I mean, he has like a particular gripe with like like I told you before, the FPS
gaming
people,
community.
Like this is what he sees as like the biggest problem.
The dude bros, yeah.
Because it's so like not only in like the gameplay, but in terms of his like yes, in terms of like Movie Bob's globalist 90s authentic integration vision, Super Mario is like the success story. That's the integration. It's like the American and the Japanese culture getting together to create something new and fresh that's going to inspire the future to moving forward and so on. Whereas like after 9/11, not only are people playing more FPSs, but they're American produced, and it's like games where you're basically shooting at America's enemies. So it's no longer a sort of culturally inclusive space in a sense. It's really more like what he sees as like these sort of killing simulators for America's enemies. So
Do
that we
you
can
know
get into.
what does Cinema Roberto think of Metal Gear Solid?
I've never heard him bring it up actually.
So I will say this is a really stupid thought, but pre N64 era, what actually is the difference between Mario and Luigi? Like really, like in the actual games? Quite literally, it's just color. That is the only thing that's actually different
Yeah,
about
unless
the
they
two of
did
them.
something in like Super Mario Bros. 3, but I
No,
don't quite
I mean,
remember
having
any
read this book,
difference.
I can answer the question. In Super Mario Brothers 1, it's just like this kind of color palette swap, right? But in
Yeah,
Super Mario
that's what I
Brothers
think I'm talking about.
2,
Yeah, I guess you're right.
in Super Mario Brothers 2, that's actually like a different game that they had to just retcon to use the Super Mario license. They had like Mario as like a smaller character, and then Luigi is taller, right? And he can jump higher. And if you played Super Mario Brothers 2, like when you can start to pick up these radishes and dig in the ground, and like Princess Peach can fly with her dress and so on. Like Luigi has like a higher jump, and he is taller in that game, so they have this like slightly different build and skills.
Okay, thank you for breaking that down in Zoomer terms, because I think the first time I encountered Mario was
Luigi has a
Super
higher
Smash
skill
Brothers
ceiling than
Brawl.
Mario. Okay, in 2008, I was spending a lot of time online, re-engaged with a gaming community that in many ways not only didn't resemble the one I recalled, but seemed openly hostile to it. A mirror image that hated its own original subject. The feeling of inclusiveness that I remembered, perhaps in rose-colored exaggeration, born from gaming culture and nerd culture having originated as one and the same, and thus sympathetic to misfits and the socially oppressed, had been replaced by a culture of bullying. A crude, cruel horde dedicated to shunning not only the old iconography of gaming, but any attempt to build a new one beyond the borders of the online multiplayer military shooter culture that had come to dominate. Whereas I'd recalled a culture that flaunted its own pseudo-multiculturalism given the sheer volume of the medium that came from the alien culture of Japan. Interesting that he tags it as pseudo-multiculturalism here. Alien culture of Japan. I now found a rabidly xenophobic culture that would not only happily purge the weird Eastern influences of the past, but also resisted the injection of any perspective that didn't align with that of a white, heterosexual, middle-class male. I was told in feverish, excited terms that gaming had matured, but from my perspective, it had merely aged. And even then, only into adolescence. The childlike and, yes, occasionally childish innocence of gamer culture I remembered had morphed into the persona of an ignorant, hormone-fueled, id-driven teenage boy, violently resentful of women, fiercely protective of privilege, eager to prove machismo, and utterly contemptible. Of course, this culture despised the we, representing as it did a fusion of all that they sought not to be, a group activity where they cultivated detachment, colorful and exuberant, where they priced darkness and edginess, and inherently foreign. It was easily the most proudly Japanese feeling trend American families had happily adopted since the suburban koi pond, where they'd come to worship the digital age version of American muscle. Some of these sentences are very strange to read.
Yeah, it's not edited, I think, by
Yeah.
anybody. I mean, like, the editor would probably have told him to not write the book at all. But
What is very
like you
strange
said,
is how, as someone who, I mean, as a millennial, I suppose video games was a part of me growing up as well. But I, at least early on, had a lot more influence of older games through my father and his computer. So it's weird that he sees as sort of like the birth of the video game is like, Super Mario, and that the next evolutionary step of it has been the shooter game, right? The military shooter. in the mid-2000s, where like if you want mature games, I mean, you can play Daggerfall.
Well, right. Like there
That's
was a
for
lot of
adults.
ground covered. Like to me, at least. And look, like I said in chat, I had a weird path where I didn't play video games at all, until I was kind of midway through middle school, and so I kind of came to the whole thing late. But like when I think of the game, like there's a lot of ground between Super Mario Brothers 3 and Call of Duty. Like you were saying, like there's the whole immersive sim thing, there's the whole like CRPG trend, like both genres I really enjoy. And like if you're looking for quote unquote like mature games, like basically you can just read all day in a game. Like if you really wanted to. And look, like I'm not like the biggest like, gamer, quote unquote, as an identity, but like it is a weird construction that in his mind, that was just an off on switch. Like there was no transition between the two.
Yeah. And at the same time, like he's talking 2008. I think something like Demon's Souls was released in 2008, which would really put a dent in Movie Bob's perspective, considering that's a Japanese game made with explicitly Western iconography.
Yes, and I mean, yeah, there's the thing that I mentioned previously, that he's not willing to move outside of his kind of hug box of what he likes with, through his childhood experience of escapism in the Super Mario Brothers. But there's another thing to take into consideration, is that he sucks. And I mean, I don't try to say
like,
this, as
he's
being
bad
mean,
at
but
video games.
he's bad at video games. Yeah, I mean, and I know this because he, like in the other part of the book where he, describes playing through Super Mario Brothers 3, he basically, it's written like a journal, so he puts the dates when he plays these various levels, right? And he takes over a month to complete the game. He boots it up at like this old NES machine that's at his grandmother's house, and because of the NES doesn't have save state, you have to just keep it on the whole time, or you can use these kind of cheat codes to get where you were. But he uses 1 month to finish the game. And I mean, there are like regular walkthroughs of that game that takes 2 hours on YouTube. It's not speed runs. It's like someone who's just like focused trying to play through the game, especially if you have experience with platformers and so on. I think maybe 2 hours is a little bit short, but if you are like a sort of veteran gamer, quote unquote, and you're familiar and comfortable with platformers, I think you should be able to knock this out in like 8 to 12 hours if you're focused.
Any veteran gamers in the chat?
Yeah, I mean, of course, it sounds stupid saying that, but I think it is a proper perspective on as compared to someone who's never played a game, for instance. Of course, it would have made more sense to spend a month trying to beat it, but he actually spends a month. I think a reason for it is that he gets liquored. He gets drunk before he does these playthroughs, right? And so with every entry, he just sort of describes how much he's had to drink, before he starts playing. So yes,
especially considering the Dark Souls thing.
But I mean, if you have played the game as a child and you come back as an adult, you should be able to finish it off reasonably fast. But he just isn't. I don't know what it is like with video game reviewers being dog shit at games, like with that Cuphead video with the guy who can't like do the double jump or something. It was very popular for a period of time, but like with Movie Bob, it's the same. He's just not completely seemed uncoordinated and unable to focus. So for him to play something like Dark Souls, I mean, forget about it. He would have taken like 5 years or something to complete it.
Well, and this ties into our earlier topic of of angle ortho, which is like if you don't like what you're interacting with, you don't have to interact with it. Like if you're not good at games, you're not good at beating games quickly.
Everyone else has to change, Burden.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like surely I'm not at fault. It's the kids these days. And that's very much what it is, where it's like, look, it's not like we live in a rigidly enforced like caste-based society. Like there's no one is born into, video games journalism. That is a choice you made. Like go somewhere else. If you don't like the culture, just go somewhere else. You are not the like essential part of culture. It's incredibly irritating to me.
But I mean, there's something perfectly kind of elite theory pilled about Movie Bob in this sense, because he doesn't care what the people think. He's completely
Yeah.
anti-populist, right? And intolerant. Like you talk about like the intolerant minority, the intolerant organized minority. Like he is this kind of intolerant minority who's not interested in anything but what he wants. Absolutely does not give a shit where the culture moves or where other, trying to meet others where they are, or do something that's for the collective good. It's only about like his interests and trying to align himself in a way that he can have that. And anything less than that is unacceptable. And of course, it sounds pathological, but this is, in a sense, it makes him perfect as a kind of political creature, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. No, that's something I've been thinking as well. I'm sorry, I have to, just because now's the time and the platform. Regarding Dark Souls and Morcar, I've never seen anyone play Dark Souls and refuse to interact with the game as much as when Morcar did it. And by that I mean, people are like, oh, you read like articles about, people telling other guys to get good at Dark Souls, and it needs a difficulty slider. But it's like, the game is literally made in a way that if you actually care about what's happening, if you just spend 5 minutes and read your stats and read the items and read, all the tweaks and the little configurations you can do to your character, you can beat the game. You tweak the difficulty to your own sort of level. And refusing to engage with the game is the worst thing you can do. And it's like watching a like contest of stubbornness when I watched Morcar play that game.
Well, and look, like as someone who's spent a lot of time with the FromSoft games, and is also considers myself particularly stubborn with video games. Like I have 100% beat those games the wrong way. I'm not a particularly like talented gamer, but like there does come a point where you do reach the wall where it's like, okay, maybe the solution to this is not just beating my head into the wall. And like I think the thing
it's
that
like,
people
okay,
find
hang on a minute, this guy is weak to lightning damage. Maybe I should do something about that, right?
Oh yeah, and so like the thing that I think I find satisfying about it is that there is kind of a problem solving aspect to it. It's like, oh, like I'm getting demolished. Like, what can I do to make this easier? Like either I can just get good, put the hours in, which don't get me wrong, I've definitely done, especially when I had more free time. But there's another part where it's like, all right, like let's try something else. And so there's that kind of like power. I mean, it really is like, and this is not a particularly good thing, but it's like the power process that Ted Kaczynski talks about, right? It's like problem, hard work, solution, and when it is obviously not to the most productive end, but it is incredibly satisfying, and so
yeah, I mean, that's why they're so popular, those games, because they allow you to experience that, the depths and the peaks and the valleys, I suppose, of overcoming these challenges so often, right? And with such consistency.
No, definitely. And again, like I'm not some ultra hardcore gamer who like loves just the things that just like beat you down and are like the most difficult.
No,
But
I don't either.
It's not a concept I don't understand. And I'm not a professional video game reviewer. And so again, this is one of those things where it's like I don't understand how this can be your job. Like all you do in life is analyze this, and you have not picked up on something that's a fairly basic concept. Again, I just do not get it.
I don't know, man. It's
But again, I keep coming back to it. It's like just complete unwillingness to kind of adapt to anything else, and it's like everybody else has to change for me, in a sense. There's like, and for, again, if you are a sensible person who will adapt, like that attitude is completely impossible to understand. But like these are the people who sort of become political elites, in a sense, because they don't really, you don't have to understand anything, but they just seem to have opinions, opinions about everything. And because I mean that's where, like, apathy becomes a problem. It's sort of a political bottleneck, in a sense, that you have people who sort of, they care about, they feel like, that's not my area of expertise, so I don't have an opinion on it, and that's a healthy thing. But from a political standpoint, it's really bad, actually, to not have opinions on stuff. Like, you should have opinions on how things should be run and what other people should do at all times. It's something I've actually tried to almost train myself to stop being apathetic, and like, if there's something that's going on, I should try to have an opinion, even though I don't want to, because you like just like you're de-boomerizing, you need to kind of like stop being apathetic in that sense. I don't know if I'm making sense right now, but yeah, these are just my thoughts.
Yeah, no, I get it. Lumberg says fat roll for the win. I actually I am currently playing Elden Ring off and on when I have time, and the first half of that game was um my goal was to basically have more, what's it called, like the stance stat that allows you to not be like staggered than any boss I was fighting, so I can just force my way through them. Which is not
Poise,
something I've ever done. Poise, yes, which is not something I've done in any other Dark Souls games. I'm mostly to be like medium or light armor to be able to dodge stuff. But now it's just about being a bigger tank than the asshole I'm fighting. All right, let's keep going.
it's yeah, two quotes. I mean, you could read both of them because they're so short.
Yeah. SSBB religious experience. To say that playing through Subspace Emissary was close to a religious experience for me in general, Link meets Yoshi, Rob stormtroopers, Kirby blowing up Bowser and Ganondorf's giant space cannon, would be putting it. What does this mean? I don't know what he's talking about here.
This is like Super Smash Brothers, right? And like there you have the crossovers where he's like going all soy jack about.
What
I
is
think that's the main
Subspace
mission.
Emissary?
I think
Okay,
that's
now
the
I see.
main game.
So the problem is it's just a really poorly constructed phrase. It's badly written, but what he's describing is things that happen in the like campaign mode of Super Smash Brothers Brawl. It's like like how fighting games
so
will have
he's like soy jacking about Avengers.
But
Brothers.
he's not helping you out because it is just a uniquely badly written sentence. Like it's just hard.
I see what he means now. Okay. To say that playing through Subspace Emissary was close to a religious experience for me in general, Link's meets Yoshi, Rob stormtroopers, Kirby blowing up Bowser, and Ganondorf's giant space cannon would be putting it mildly. But even after that, seeing Mario and Sonic together in a real game, and able to fight one another no less, felt more like real, genuine closure than it had any right to be for a grown man. It sure did, Bob. It sure did.
Yeah, that's like the last significant quote, and the last quote that I put in here is just something that he adds like during the playthrough that I just found particularly like, why would you even put this in here?
That's a sort of funny 30, moment. 2012. I just had a creepy yet utterly banal pre-bedtime moment. A box of cereal I vividly remember opening and eating from a day or so ago is sealed shut. It has never been opened. I'm not sure what this means or implies, either about me or the cereal. Did I hallucinate eating cereal? Of all the things to conjure, why that? And if so, why not a cereal I liked more than Special K red berries? If I was going to dream of cereal, I'd have preferred it to be something more potent like Fruity Pebbles or Blueberry. Whatever. Time to play some of the water levels.
How
much does this cost? This book?
You could check it out. It's probably on sale. I can't imagine it's much more like maybe $10, $12 or something. But you have to order it. Like there's no shop with any sense that's gonna have this stocked. So it's like this very niche, internet video game book publisher that you have to buy it from. Of course, you could just get the PDF, right? That's what I did because I had a copy of it. I gave it away to someone else, and I wasn't able to borrow it back, so I just found the PDF, which you can get for free.
Right.
Wait.
I think that's all the quotes we have.
Go back up to the it's like the wizard something.
Oh, the wizard movie. We didn't read the wizard movie.
Yeah, I'm seeing some keywords in there, and before we get out of that, I just want to say that last section is completely insane, and that kind of like weird, train of thought writing. I've been reading some Vonnegut recently. I finally read Slaughterhouse-Five after reading, most of Vonnegut's other work, and he will also.
Are you about to liken Kurt Vonnegut to Movie Bob?
Only slightly, in the sense that ever since Vonnegut, because Vonnegut's a good writer, but he has this plague of being kind of the accessible literature, because his books are, written in kind of vernacular and they're relatively short. Like a lot of people have read them, and he's really influenced how prose is written, and specifically that weird mix of like off, like kind of like not quite stream of consciousness, but almost just like random details that don't seem important. It's interesting when you see someone who's like a master of English prose do it, because like, okay, you're bending the rules to make a point. But this is like the ultimate debased version of that, where not only does it not even make grammatical sense, but it is literally a pointless story about opening your Goislop box and have it not be opened in the way you thought it was.
Because I've had the same sort of thought time and time again when reading. I've been promoting Hamsun, and he's credited as one of the guys who sort of promoted that stream of consciousness type of writing, and it reads like one of his earlier works because then it's very like prototypical, right? And it does. It reads like it's exactly what you're saying. This like strange, overly detailed stream of consciousness writing, but it's about this like weird weed fantasy or whatever he's he's like delusional video game thing he's doing. I don't know.
Exactly. And the phrase "an odd pre-bedtime ritual" is one of the most disturbing. It's like fragments of a sentence.
I just picture Movie Bob before he goes to bed. He has to stop by the kitchen and have a handful of Special K red berries.
Oh, see, I anticipate him eating in bed like an absolute animal.
Oh,
but
yeah, that may be.
Look, I think we put it this way, that there's almost nothing I could find out about Movie Bob's personal life that would surprise me. Like just the saddest thing you can think of, he's probably written about that in a positive light in his own autobiography.
Odd.
We lost him again.
No,
are you still here?
He's back.
It's okay. I have this bad habit of, because I don't have a camera connected to my desktop, I will try to mute myself and accidentally hit the start camera button.
Yeah.
That's my bad. There's no internet problem.
Okay. The Wizard movie. Now, having watched the film much, much more often than it deserves since then, I can likely quote about 80% of a chapter and verse. You got 50,000 points in Double Dragon? I love the power glove. It's so bad. Video Armageddon. He touched my breasts. California. But the climatic reveal of Super Mario Bros. 3 is seared into my memory the way JFK's assassination was for my parents' generation, or the way 9/11 would be for mine a scant 12 years from then. ...
This man literally, nothing has happened to Movie Bob. Like he's defined his life around the most.
He's grasping at straws like a madman. Yeah. Wow.
It legitimately is kind of pathetic. And so in much the same way that I think that the Coomer meme, really kind of changed the discussion about like, NoFap and like how guys on the internet, related to sexual content, by kind of showing you like, wait a minute, like this is what you become, kind of like showing you your face in the mirror, even in kind of like a silly way. I kind of look at Movie Bob like that. Like this is what you could become, like kind of like there, but for the grace of God go I. And in a weird way, like I do find Movie Bob pitiable, because this is a really pathetic life. And not just saying that to dunk on him, but like there's a danger.
Looking at it from the outside, it's very sad.
No, it is. And I think that in all of us, just by being like kind of, people of the internet, there is that tendency to escapism, that tendency to like obsession on things that don't really matter. And then you see this man and you're like, oh, I've got to stop. I can't let it get too far or I'll turn out like this. It's very much like
it's like the inner J-man. You have your inner Movie Bob.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. And so like there's multiple layers to my obsession with him. I don't even say obsession like I know everything about him, but the reason I still kind of follow him around on the internet. And that's definitely a big part of it. Just the like, I want to keep him around so I don't become anything like him.
Yeah, Ludwig said it earlier. You can sort of define yourself in opposition to Movie Bob.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely perfect. In that sense, it's actually kind of useful, and it's not going to get any better, right? He is 41 now. Is going to be 10 years. Is going to be 50. You know, what else is he going to do? He's just going to keep going down this track that he's always been going down. Every year it gets a little bit more sad than the previous year, so it's going to be funny. Hopefully, it'll be like a cautionary tale for younger men out there.
Yeah, hopefully. Sorry, I was just over at his channel looking at what he's been posting. But he has like 130K subscribers, which isn't bad.
Yeah, but I mean, he's been very consistent with putting stuff out there, and I mean, of course, he looks like he's extremely prolific in creating videos. You have to realize that this is like the only thing that he does. He doesn't have a day job, right?
Right.
It's kind of in, and he makes more money like working for these reviewing companies than he did with Blockbuster. So, I mean, in the book, he's explained that he lived with his parents until he was 31. And then he was able to move out and find an apartment, but then he kind of lost some of that revenue. It's likely that after that he had to move back in with his parents again and so
that
on.
Must have been like, hang on, because if he moved out at 31 and he got fired from the Escapist because of Gamergate, which was in 2012, so that must have been why he had to move back, because he got fired.
Yeah, at least I think so. It's not explained fully in the book, but I assume that with the living costs and everything, even though I mean he's not living in New York, he lives in Massachusetts, I think. So I mean, yeah, then I don't have that much more to cover from the book, but I mean, I just wanted to know if like he's been up to anything interesting in these last 5 years, because the last time it was significant was during the the Gamergate debacle and like with the Trump election and so on, where people were trying to call him out for debates and stuff, and he actually, he was a little bit more visible on the screen. I mean, of course, he's never going to do debates or anything like that, but that's again one of his like accidentally kind of based political intuitions, just not doing debates, even though it's because you suck. You just kind of realize that it's a complete waste of time to do this stuff. You're just gonna have to stay within the little corner of power that you have and just completely turn every screw you can to target the enemy, and not bother engaging with discussing things or trying to moderate yourself.
Sorry, Jayburn, you sent me what's this? The mouse trapped.
So one of the great things about Movie Bob is that he has a special like series for political content or political like kind of related to movies or anything. And it's not like amazingly hilarious, but as I was kind of going through his YouTube channel, I started looking at his thumbnails, and I will occasionally, ironically, dip my toe in
Occasionally.
But this man,
I've seen some of your thumbnails.
Look, I don't do them for real videos, so it's okay. I'm ironically doing something shameless, so you can't make fun of me.
7 arrows.
But there is just something about it that like there's both the sadness of like this is what he's become, but also like I think you're dead right when it comes to like he really hasn't done much since Gamergate, and he's still just kind of churning out these videos, and his channel is just like slowly shrinking and going down to nothing. Like, look, I don't want to say like any of us have like the best YouTube metrics ever, but like this guy's getting despite having okay, fair point, but despite this guy having like over 100,000 subs, like he's barely cracking the 10,000 15,000 viewer mark for like short clickbait videos, which fair enough, like I get it, he's making his money, but like how long can this go on?
Well, knowing the other side of YouTube, I mean, you're not making that much money.
Yeah, you're certainly not making the kind of money you'd want to be in your late 40s, Like at this point, I guess Blockbuster doesn't exist, but you have to start to do the math. Like, are you really coming out on top of this?
Yeah.
And this is quite funny, of course, because you'll see tweets where he talks about himself as being like this coastal elite who it was not affected by globalism or anything like it, because he has like these unique skills that sort of makes him globalism proof, unlike all of these like mid-American hillbillies and so on.